Bending, leaning, lifting, stretching. These are some of the benefits of having a healthy back, a healthy spine. But for people suffering from inflammation and arthritic pain of the spine, even the most routine activities can be significantly limited.
Every day you have pain. Every day of my life there's pain. Whether it's in my hands, my back, my neck.
I had a hard time just doing normal things like brushing my teeth. So very quickly it decayed to the point where I just wasn't able to do anything.
The disease has an intimidating name. It's called ankylosing spondylitis, or AS. And thanks to advanced methods in detection and early treatment, doctors now address the progression of this disease in more effective ways.
Major funding for Healthy Body, Healthy Mind is provided by Sanofi Aventis. Throughout the world, every day, everywhere, working for what really matters, health. And by Novartis, discovering and developing innovative products to cure diseases, ease suffering, and enhance the quality of life. And by Genentech, a biotechnology company that uses human genetic information to discover, develop, and manufacture biotherapeutics that address significant unmet medical needs. Additional funding provided by Abbott Laboratories and by AstraZeneca.
Welcome to Healthy Body, Healthy Mind. I'm Carlos Pagan. Back pain is a common ailment for most people. For the everyday kind of back pain caused by the occasional twists and turns, we can typically rest to a full recovery. But there's another kind of back pain that's caused by inflammation. And for this type of pain, rest isn't the answer. In fact, for this form, there is no cure as yet that can lead to a full recovery. That's the case for the disease known as ankylosing spondylitis, or AS.
But they are all surrounded by these bony bridges.
Ankylosing spondylitis is a chronic inflammatory disease that results in arthritis of the spine. The inflammation of the vertebrae can eventually cause them to fuse together, creating a loss of spinal mobility and function.
Ankylosing spondylitis primarily affects the spine, including the neck, and if it involves other joints, mostly it is the root joints, the hips and shoulders.
And if you stop and think for a minute how much you actually use your spine and how you depend on the flexibility of the spine to do all activities of daily life, you can really appreciate how it affects the quality of life and daily functioning of patients who may have spinal pain and stiffness.
Driving is often considered a routine activity, but AS patients often have difficulty turning from side to side in order to observe the traffic around them.
My vertebrae are freezing or calcifying, going right up into my neck. Therefore, range of motion, like you can turn and like this and look over your shoulder and see the blind spot. Driving, I can't do that. Therefore, I have to turn my entire body. I don't have near the range of motion that I did prior to the disease.
So in the worst of it, between 99 and 01, my neck was under inflammation. I couldn't drive a car without really being a danger on the road.
Rheumatologists estimate that nearly 500,000 people in the United States live with ankylosing spondylitis. And because there is no cure, the earlier patients are examined by a rheumatologist, the better their chances will be both in managing their disease and protecting their spine.
People need to understand that it's a chronic disease at this point. It will be with them for the rest of their lives. We have treatments, but as of today, those treatments are lifelong.
Knees straight, don't lift the heels up.
Ankylosing spondylitis usually strikes young adults between the ages of 20 and 40, but the disease can also be detected in adolescents and even children. According to a survey by the Spondylitis Association of America, 25% of patients suffering from AS had to change their jobs or even their careers because of their disease. For more information about ankylosing spondylitis and many other health and wellness topics, visit our website at healthybodyhealthymind.com. Because there is a genetic component to ankylosing spondylitis, rheumatologists will want to know if patients have any family history of the disease. Doctors report that up to 20% of patients have at least one other family member with AS. Like most medical problems, early detection is important. Carlos Bain has more.
Whether ankylosing spondylitis gets worse over time depends on a number of factors, such as how old the person is when the disease begins, how early it is diagnosed, and what particular joints of the body are involved. The patients we'll meet today all discovered the disease early and were determined not to allow it to take over their lives. At 67 years old, Don Rotiers has spent a lifetime battling ankylosing spondylitis. He was first diagnosed with the disease in his late 20s. Despite the pain, Don kept to a grueling work schedule, which required him to spend hours of traveling to meet clients.
I lived in my car or in an airplane, so sitting that long, I'd stiffen up and lock up, and it was very, very difficult. My wife laughs about it today. She said I used to get home on Friday or Saturday night. She'd have to go out and pry me out of the car because I was so locked up.
Today, Don is retired and enjoying life at home in Redwood City, California, just outside San Francisco. Now he has more time to take care of his body.
But you don't have a day without pain. So you learn to live with the pain is basically what you're doing.
Morning, Don. Morning, Doc. Good to see you. Good to see you. How have you been doing?
Throughout the year, Don is examined by his rheumatologist, Dr. John Davis, based at the University of California, San Francisco School of Medicine. Dr. Davis is a leading authority in the research and treatment management of ankylosing spondylitis.
The hallmark of this group of diseases is what's called enthesopathy. And this basically means just inflammation of where a ligament inserts into the bone.
In a normal spinal column, the vertebrae are well spaced. Ligament and disc tissue are healthy. During the first stage of AS, inflammation begins to take place where the tendons and ligaments attach to bone, often near a joint. Over time, the area begins to heal and form scar tissue. That scar tissue calcifies and turns into bone. This leads to fusion of the joint and results in restricted motion of the spine.
And chronic inflammation in those areas can eventually lead to bone formation in places where it normally wouldn't exist. And when you have this bone formation, you can then fuse areas, in particular of the spine, between the vertebral bodies, and that causes a decrease in spinal mobility or able to bend or stretch the spine.
The early warning signs of ankylosing spondylitis include morning stiffness of the spine. The duration of the pain and stiffness becomes greater than 3 months. Once the pain begins, it worsens gradually. The age of the patient's onset is under 40 years old, and there is some improvement with exercise. Dr. Muhammad Khan is a 62-year-old rheumatologist at Case Western Reserve University in Cleveland, Ohio. Dr. Khan has been practicing medicine for 40 years. He has had ankylosing spondylitis for 50 years.
And with fusion of the spine, the inflammation goes away. The person may not have pain, but they have a lack of mobility. So after half a century of the disease, I have no pain. I have no back pain or stiffness. But my spine is permanently stiff because it is all fused. So I have total fusion of my neck and rest of the spine. And this is what should be prevented.
There is a genetic test for the disease. The test searches for the genetic cell marker human leukocyte antigen, or HLA-B27. The HLA-B27 gene by itself does not cause ankylosing spondylitis. Medical researchers do believe that the HLA-B27 gene interacts with other proteins and alters the body's immune response. In Dr. Muhammad Khan's family, the gene has been found in 3 generations.
We have known about this genetic association for well over 20 years, in particular with ankylosing spondylitis. The gene occurs in about 7 to 8% of the general population not affected with this group of diseases. However, in ankylosing spondylitis, over 90% of the patients will have HLA-B27.
Rheumatologists report that 90% of patients have the HLA-B27 gene. Doctors continue to look into the role bacteria may have in the disease.
There are other groups that have reported that having the presence of HLA-B27 allows for the persistence of certain types of bacteria in the body, and those bacteria can cause inflammation, and that inflammation can eventually lead to the bone formation along the spine.
The HLA-B27 gene marker cannot predict who will get ankylosing spondylitis, since fewer than 5% of people with the gene will develop the disease.
So in future,
Over 6 years ago, at the age of 29, Clarence So, an internet company executive in San Francisco, started experiencing the first signs of the disease.
I woke up one day and my neck was becoming really stiff, and over the course of about a week it became so stiff that I probably had a hard time just doing this type of motion, and actually turning around and looking over my shoulder was darn near impossible. It was very painful.
The HLA-B27 gene marker can not only point the way to ankylosing spondylitis, but also some of the complications it can create, like acute iritis, a condition of the eye.
The telltale change was after 4 years of enduring this type of pain, I actually started getting what's now called iritis, and so it was inflammation in my eye. It was spontaneous, so I went and saw an eye doctor. The eye doctor said, normally you only get iritis through some type of trauma unless you have an autoimmune disorder called ankylosing spondylitis.
okay, so lean forward. And
In order to diagnose this disease, a rheumatologist examines the patient's spine, as well as test their range of motion. Doctors will also review the patient's MRI to confirm their findings.
We have the ability to use MRI, which can show us inflammation at a much earlier stage of the disease. We're using MRI more commonly now, as well as ultrasound, to make the diagnosis with the characteristic changes of inflammation along the spine or sacroiliac joints, and then getting the patient's effective treatment.
The physical exam is still the most important part of the diagnosis of ankylosing spondylitis. By the time most patients seek a rheumatologist, the impact from the disease is already present.
9. Thank you.
Rheumatologists in many cases can examine the slope of a patient's shoulders and back, as well as their walking stride, to get an idea of the severity of their ankylosing spondylitis. Coming up, we'll look at how medical science is working to help patients deal with the range of motion issues they face with AS.
Doctors say that when dealing with AS, medication alone will not increase or even maintain spinal joint motion and function. According to the Ankylosing Spondylitis Society, an effective treatment plan should incorporate both medication and an exercise regimen. In general, range of motion exercises should be done daily for all joints that are stiff or have the potential of becoming stiff. Stretching exercises focus on the soft area around the joint. Stretching helps ease the pain in stiff joints and muscles. Strengthening exercises should also be done regularly to build full muscle strength and help patients maintain good posture. And then there are the endurance exercises, such as walking to raise the heart rate, which helps provide stamina and energy. In fact, in AS patients, the heart itself is carefully monitored. That's because the inflammation process of this disease can at times affect the heart. Dr. Perry Kritschmar explains in this Healthy Minute.
It's a debilitating condition of the spine with a very unusual name, ankylosing spondylitis. But this inflammatory condition can also affect the heart as well. In rare cases, ankylosing spondylitis can damage the aortic valve of the heart, causing it to leak. It can also slow the conduction of electrical activity within the heart, affecting its rhythm. Patients should be aware that in most instances, these conditions go unnoticed in the early stages of the disease. So it's important for your cardiologist to examine your heart at least once a year to monitor these possible conditions. That's a Healthy Minute. I'm Dr. Perry Kritschmar.
How many vertebrae and joints are there in the human spine? The spine is made up of 24 vertebrae and 110 joints. For more information about ankylosing spondylitis and many other health and wellness topics, visit our website at healthybodyhealthymind.com. How effective physical activity and proper medication are often depends on each individual case. Correspondent Carlos Bain joins us again with more on the treatment of AS inflammation designed to protect the mobility of the spine.
Fatigue can also be a byproduct of AS. It takes a lot of energy for patients to deal with the extensive inflammation they encounter. Rheumatologists have treatments that can help AS patients have a much better quality of life. Having lived with ankylosing spondylitis for nearly 40 years, Don Rotiers has been through several generations of medications. For years, he says the medications gave him little, if any, benefits. His experiences were not good ones.
A lot of them is like it's been through hell because you're trying to take the things and you're having dizzy spells and gut pain and yet your arthritis is flaring and hurting. You want relief from that. It's a long process of trial and error. That's why you need a good rheumatologist.
Studies have focused on one of the triggering mechanisms for AS inflammation. It's tumor necrosis factor, or TNF. Elevated levels of TNF are usually present in the body tissue of patients with ankylosing spondylitis. TNF is a protein that helps regulate the inflammatory process.
TNF is a key molecule in inflammation, and blocking this key molecule has many, many downstream effects. It decreases the inflammation along the spine. It can decrease the arthritis that occurs in patients. If the patient only has symptoms that affect the spine, after they've not responded to the anti-inflammatory drugs, we will then prescribe an TNF blocking agent.
So in the last 5 years, there is very convincing evidence that for those patients, TNF blockers are very, very effective. And one can find out whether they are going to respond to TNF blockers within 8 to 12 weeks.
The response has been just that dramatic for Clarence So. Once he began taking the biologic treatments designed to block TNF, his spinal flexibility and range of motion improved.
Within days after taking these shots, I was sleeping from 30 minutes to 4 hours at a time within 3 days. And then within maybe a week or two, I was walking pretty much normally.
A TNF blocker is also a part of Don Rotiers' treatment plan.
My life is better. It's not 100%. I'm not pain-free. I have bad times, good times. But the quality of life is better, and that's what you're looking for.
With today's treatment options, rheumatologists are able to find the right combination of medications to keep patients on their feet and active.
I think we'll know a lot more about these medications that are approved right now or have pending approval. We'll know a lot more about their long-term efficacy, and importantly, we'll know about their long-term safety.
I really have stepped back a little bit. I'm not eager to take on a lot of stress and a lot of responsibility. I'm a lot more careful on how I manage my stress. I'm very militant about sleep. I'm very militant about getting my workout in, and you know, if things become really, really stressful, I start to look for alternatives because it's really not worth losing my health again.
Currently, the biologic medications available can help AS patients manage their disease. And while there is no cure, patients can still maintain and enjoy very rewarding lives.
Doctors say when coping with a disease like AS, it's important for patients to aim high in their quest to maintain an active life. Becoming discouraged by focusing on the limitations can cause some patients to scale back on things they might otherwise be able to continue for some time to come.
It's not as damaged.
Having treated AS throughout his medical career, as well as having to live with this disease since childhood, Dr. Khan didn't allow it to stop him from having a complete and satisfying life. He's learned to adapt at work, at home, and in his art. This self-portrait was created to express his personal experience living with AS.
Most of the patients can have a very fulfilling life. They can get married, they can have as many children as they want. Just because they had the disease, they shouldn't worry that their children are going to get the disease.
While the contact sports of his youth are a thing of the past for Clarence So, he's discovering new ways to maintain an active sports life. He's now healthy enough to begin training for a triathlon, which will include swimming in cold San Francisco Bay, plus biking, and running the physically challenging streets of San Francisco.
Well, for some reason, exercise is amazingly effective in controlling the pain, especially for me, vigorous exercise where I can get out of breath a bit.
Both exercise and medication have helped Don Rotieres respond well enough to take long and frequent overseas trips.
Our life is very full. We do a lot of traveling. I'm on a computer looking for the next trip and driving my wife nuts, dragging her all over the world.
In the future, I see the possibility of combination of biologic agents or molecules. I see the possibility of having even oral forms of these type of medications for convenience of the patients.
The next generation of medications may include treatment delivery in pill form. This may be several years away, but doctors say the work in this area is important.
It would be nice to have a drug that is cheap and is effective in the form of a tablet. So my prediction is that with the work going on, there will be cheaper and more effective and safer drugs, at least I hope.
As we've said, medication and the appropriate exercise regimen are cornerstones in the treatment of ankylosing spondylitis. Together, they help manage the pain and stiffness, which in turn aids the patient in maintaining a good range of physical motion as they go about their daily lives. A supportive social network of family and friends is also important in helping patients cope with this debilitating disease. That wraps up this edition of Healthy Body, Healthy Mind. I'm Carlos Pagan. Thanks for joining us. See you next time. For more information about ankylosing spondylitis and many other health and wellness topics, visit our website at healthybodyhealthymind.com. And to answer any specific questions you might have about ankylosing spondylitis, be sure to contact your healthcare provider. To comment on today's program, call 888-380-6500 or email hbhm@itvIsus.com or visit our website at healthybodyhealthymind.com.
Major funding for Healthy Body, Healthy Mind is provided by Sanofi Aventis. Throughout the world, every day, everywhere, working for what really matters: health. And by Novartis, discovering and developing innovative products to cure diseases, ease suffering, and enhance the quality of life. And by Genentech, a biotechnology company that uses human genetic information to discover, develop, and manufacture biotherapeutics that address significant unmet medical needs. Additional funding provided by Abbott Laboratories and by AstraZeneca.